Tiêu đề. I came home from vacation and found my suitcases waiting outside. Xác định dạng mô típ tiêu đề. Tiêu đề này thuộc bàn tay chỉ sang phải dạng một khi tôi bị bỏ rơi loại khỏi gia đình, cú sốc mở đầu. Lý do, có cấu trúc trở về sau một sự kiện phát hiện cú phản bội ngay lập tức. Nhân vật chính là người lớn tuổi bị loại khỏi chính ngôi nhà, gia đình của mình. Hút mở bằng một hình ảnh điện ảnh mạnh, Super Whiting Ousted. Mô típ trung tâm, bị đuổi khỏi nhà, bị phản bội âm thầm, con dâu thao túng, con trai im lặng đồng lõa, phản công lạnh ở cuối, khớp mạnh với. When I turned 65, now that your husband is dead, coming back from a trip, I found my bags on the sidewalk. Tên 13 phần, dạng một chuyện family L. Nhân vật chính, Evelyn Carter, 68 tuổi, quả phụ, tinh tế, điềm tĩnh. Con trai, Michael Carter, 42. Con dâu, Vanessa Carter, 39. Cháu gái, Lily, 12. Đồng minh, Mark Gazette, hàng xóm lâu năm. Phần 1, cú sốc trước cửa nhà. Evelyn trở về sau chuyến nghỉ dưỡng 5 ngày tại Arizona. Bà nhìn thấy 2 chiếc vali đặt ngoài hiên. Ổ khóa đã đổi. Một phong bì dán trên cửa. Trong thư, Michael thinks it's best if you stay somewhere else for a while. Vanessa đứng bên cửa sổ nhìn xuống nhưng không mở cửa. Kết. Evelyn nhận ra đây không phải hiểu lầm. Phần 2, căn nhà không còn là nhà. Evelyn ngồi trong xe hàng giờ. Hồi tưởng, chính tay bà mua căn nhà cùng chồng quá cố. Michael lớn lên ở đây. Vanessa từng gọi bà là Mom. Nhưng, từ khi Vanessa dọn vào, mọi thứ thay đổi dần. Phần 3, những dấu hiệu bà đã bỏ qua. Hồi tưởng, Vanessa tự ý đổi nội thất, chuyển ảnh gia đình của Evelyn xuống tầng hầm. NOI, the house needs younger energy. Michael luôn, Nithan, MLNG. Vanessa means well. Phần 4, sự thật đầu tiên. Margaret hàng xóm xuất hiện. Bà tiết lộ, trong lúc Evelyn đi vắng, công ty môi giới đã tới xem nhà. Vanessa đang cố bán nhà. Evelyn chết lặng. Phần 5, cuộc gọi lạnh người. Evelyn gọi cho Michael. Anh nói, Mom, maybe assisted living would be easier for everyone. Không một lời xin lỗi. Kết. Evelyn hiểu con trai đã chọn phe. Phần 6, đêm đầu tiên bị lưu đày. Evelyn ở motel nhỏ ven đường. Miêu tả, tiếng máy lạnh cũ. Sandwich nguội. Anh chồng trong ví. Nhưng thay vì khóc, bà bắt đầu suy nghĩ. Phần 7, chiếc hộp két cũ. Evelyn nhớ tới giấy tờ gốc căn nhà. Trust của chồng. Một điều khoản Michael chưa từng biết. Căn nhà chưa bao giờ thuộc về Michael. Phần 8, luật sư xuất hiện. Luật sư cũ của chồng xác nhận Evelyn là chủ sở hữu duy nhất. Vanessa không có quyền bán. Việc đổi khóa có thể vi phạm pháp lý. Lần đầu, Evelyn mỉm cười. Phần 9, Vanessa bắt đầu hoảng. Vanessa phát hiện Suitcases bị đóng băng. Michael nổi giận hỏi mẹ, Why are you doing this to us? Evelyn đáp, You locked me out of my own life. Phần 10, bữa tối gia đình giả tạo. Vanessa cố tổ chức dinner hòa giải, nhưng Lily vô tình tiết lộ. Vanessa đã lên kế hoạch từ nhiều tháng. Bà nội bị xem như dead weight. Michael bắt đầu nhận ra sự thật. Phần 11, cú phản công im lặng. Evelyn quay về nhà cùng Shirley. Vanessa phải mở cửa. Không la hét, không trả thù lớn tiếng. Evelyn chỉ nói, This house remembers who built it. Phần 12, gia đình sụp đổ. Michael và Vanessa cãi nhau dữ dội. Sự thao túng của Vanessa lộ hoàn toàn. Michael xin lỗi mẹ, nhưng Evelyn không còn tin nữa. Phần 13, kết thúc lành và đắt. Evelyn sửa lại căn nhà. Bà ăn sáng một mình ngoài hiên. Thanh thản. Catline. Some doors close quietly. So does love. Tên mới. 9 phần. Bà nâng cấp sang Emerson và Du Viu Hân. Phần 1. Vali trước hiên nhà. Hút cực nhanh. Evelyn kéo vali lên bậc thềm. Chìa khóa không mở được. Camera điện bật sáng. Vanessa đang theo dõi từ bên trong. Kết bằng nốt. You don't live here anymore. Phần 2. Người phụ nữ bị xóa khỏi chính cuộc đời mình. Evelyn ngồi trong xe suốt đêm. Lần đầu bà nhận ra, mọi dấu vết của mình trong căn nhà đã bị xóa dần từ nhiều năm trước. Phần 3. Chuyến đi không phải tình cờ. Reveal. Vanessa cố tình tặng chuyến Vacatino để đẩy Evelyn ra khỏi nhà tạm thời. Trong lúc bà đi, khóa đổi, Kinto tới, đồ đạc bị dọn. Phần 4. Con trai không còn là con trai. Phone call với Michael. Anh không bên mẹ. Chỉ nói, we need space. Câu này giết chết Evelyn hơn cả việc bị đuổi. Phần 5. Đêm em và di chúc cũ. Không khí cô độc điện ảnh. Evelyn mở chiếc phong bì chồng để lại nhiều năm trước. Bên trong, trust, thư tay, cảnh báo về lòng tham. Phần 6. Phản công bắt đầu trong im lặng. Luật sư xác nhận, căn nhà vẫn thuộc Evelyn. Vanessa đã giả mạo vài giấy tờ phụ. Evelyn không gọi cảnh sát ngay. Bà chờ. Phần 7. Bữa tối tan nát. Vanessa tổ chức family dinner để ép Evelyn ký giấy. Nhưng Lily vô tình nói, Mom said Grandma would never come back anyway. Cả bàn ăn chết lặng. Phần 8. Ngày lấy lại ngôi nhà. Evelyn quay về với luật sư và sơ deep. Vanessa hoảng loạn. Michael finally realizes, anh đã đánh mất mẹ mình. Phần 9. Căn nhà yên tĩnh trở lại. Kết cinematic. Evelyn tưới hoa buổi sáng. Tháo camera điện Vanessa lắp. Cất lại ảnh chồng. Final line. They thought they were throwing me away. They forgot whose home it was. Kỹ thuật viết cho dạng đã xác định. Dạng 1. Một hút phải vào ngay cú đầu. Ví dụ, vali ngoài cửa. Khóa bị đổi. Không ai tới sinh nhật. Bị bỏ quên ở lễ gia đình. Không dẫn dài. Phải tạo. Backend index pointing right. What happened here? Hai nhân vật chính không khóc lóc quá nhiều. Điểm mạnh của dạng này. Đau nhưng giữ phẩm giá. Càng im càng mạnh. Phản công lạnh. Không viết. I screamed and cried. Mà viết. I sat in the car and watched the porch light turn off. Ba viết bằng chi tiết nhỏ thay cho kể lệ. Không nói. Tôi bị tổn thương. Mà dùng. Bánh sinh nhật tan chảy. Nến cháy hết. Vali ngoài hiên. Ảnh gia đình bị tháo xuống. 4 nhịp câu ngắn. Tạo cô đơn. Ví dụ. The porch light flicked off. My key no longer worked. No one opened the door. Nhịp ngắn giúp. Cinematic. The voice. Zuzi Tentino YouTube. 5. Plot twist phải đến theo tầng. Tầng 1. Bị đuổi. Tầng 2. Con trai đồng lõa. Tầng 3. Họ muốn bán nhà. Tầng 4. Ngôi nhà thật ra thuộc Evelyn. 6. Kết thúc không cần trả thù nào. Dạng này mạnh nhất khi nhân vật chính thắng bằng sự điềm tĩnh. Không gào thét. Không cần ác lại. Kết phải. Bàn tay chỉ sang phải lạnh. Bàn tay chỉ sang phải trưởng thành. Backhand index pointing right, bittersweet. Bàn tay chỉ sang phải cô độc nhưng có phẩm giá. I sat in my car until the sun disappeared behind the maple trees across the street. The porch light came on automatically at 6:30, just like it always had. Harold installed that light himself 20 years ago because he said he never wanted me coming home to a dark house. I stared at it through my windshield while my overnight bag rested beside me on the passenger seat, like something abandoned at an airport. Inside the house, shadows moved behind the curtains. Vanessa walked past the front window, carrying one of my framed photographs. I recognized it immediately. It was the picture Harold took on our anniversary trip to Maine, the summer before he got sick. She did not even glance outside. She just disappeared deeper into the house with it tucked under her arm like it belonged to her now. My fingers tightened around the steering wheel. For a moment, I almost got out of the car, almost walked to the front door and demanded answers. But something stopped me. Maybe it was the way Michael had not called me once since I landed. Maybe it was the note taped beside my suitcase in Vanessa's perfect handwriting. Maybe it was the horrible feeling settling in my chest that this had been planned long before I left for Arizona. I leaned my head back against the seat and closed my eyes. That house had been my entire adult life. I painted every room myself. I planted the hydrangeas along the front walkway with Harold the year Michael started kindergarten. I still remembered him running through the sprinkler in the backyard wearing those tiny red rain boots he refused to take off all summer. Back then, he used to wait by the front window every evening for me to come home from work. Now I was sitting outside that same window like a stranger. Around 7:15, the front door finally opened. My breath caught for half a second, but it was not Michael. It was Lily. My granddaughter stepped onto the porch holding a trash bag almost as big as she was. She froze when she saw my car still parked to the curb. Even from across the yard, I could see panic flash across her face. She hurried down the steps and stopped beside my driver's side window. "Grandma," she whispered, "you are still here?" I rolled the window down slowly. Apparently, Lily glanced nervously back toward the house. "Mom said you already left for Florida." My stomach tightened. "Florida?" She nodded quickly. "She told Dad you wanted to move there after your vacation. She said you were happier starting over somewhere else." I stared at her, unable to speak. Lily looked terrified now, twisting the drawstrings of the trash bag between her fingers. "Grandma, there are people inside looking at your bedroom." My blood went cold. Before I could ask another question, the front door opened again and Vanessa's voice sliced through the quiet evening air. "Lily, get back inside. Right now." Lily flinched instantly. Then she whispered something so softly I almost missed it. "Grandpa warned me this might happen before he died." My heart stopped. In the next part, Evelyn discovers what Harold secretly changed just weeks before his funeral. But someone inside the house is already trying to erase every trace of it before she can find the truth. Vanessa stood in the doorway with one hand gripping the frame, so tightly her knuckles looked pale under the porch light. She was still wearing the cream-colored sweater I bought her 3 Christmases ago, the one she cried over because she said nobody had ever remembered her favorite color before. Funny how quickly gratitude disappears when people start believing they own your life. "Lily," she repeated sharply. Inside, Lily lowered her eyes and hurried past her mother without another word. The trash bag bumped against her knees as she climbed the porch steps. Vanessa watched her disappear into the house before finally looking at me. Not warmly, not even awkwardly, just cold, like I was someone knocking on the wrong door. "You should not still be here, Evelyn," she said quietly. I stared at her through the open car window. Apparently, there are many things I should have known. She crossed her arms. "Michael thought it would be easier this way." Easier. Such a harmless little word for something so cruel. I glanced toward the front hallway behind her. My grandfather clock was gone. The one Harold restored by hand during the winter Michael turned 10. The empty spot against the wall looked wrong, like a missing tooth. Vanessa noticed where I was looking. "We are reorganizing." I almost laughed at that. Reorganizing 38 years of my life into garbage bags and cardboard boxes. "You changed the locks while I was away?" I asked. She sighed dramatically, as though I was exhausting her. We needed boundaries. The porch light flickered above her head. Somewhere inside the house, I heard men laughing softly. Strangers, walking through my bedroom while my suitcases sat on the sidewalk. My chest tightened so hard, I had to grip the steering wheel again. "Who is in my house?" I asked. Vanessa hesitated for half a second too long. "Just contractors." But even she did not sound convincing. Then Michael finally appeared behind her. My son looked tired, older than 42. His tie hung loose around his neck, and there were dark circles under his eyes I had never noticed before. For one foolish second, I thought maybe he would come outside and fix this. Maybe he would tell Vanessa this had gone too far. Instead, he stopped beside her and would not meet my eyes. "Mom," he said softly, "you are making this harder than it needs to be." Those words hurt more than the lock on the door. Harder for who? I wanted to ask. Harder for the woman selling my home behind my back? Harder for the son pretending his mother no longer belonged there? But I said nothing, because suddenly I remembered something Harold told me 6 months before he died. We were sitting in the kitchen drinking coffee after Michael and Vanessa left early from Thanksgiving dinner. Harold stared out the window for a long time before quietly saying, If anything ever feels wrong after I am gone, check the cedar chest in the attic before you trust anyone. At the time, I thought grief and medication were clouding his mind. But now, watching strangers move through my living room, I realized he had known something long before I did. Then one of the men inside stepped near the window carrying a clipboard. I could clearly hear him say, "Once the old owner is officially out, this place will sell fast." Old owner. Vanessa immediately slammed the front door shut. In the next part, Evelyn realizes the attic may hold more than memories. And before morning comes, someone inside the house will try very hard to reach the cedar chest first. I drove 3 miles before I realized I was crying. Not loudly, not dramatically, just silent tears slipping down my face while the radio hummed softly through the speakers. I pulled into the parking lot of a small roadside motel near Interstate 84, the kind with faded flower pots outside each room and a blinking vacancy sign that buzzed in the dark. The young woman at the front desk smiled politely when she handed me my key. She could not have been older than Lily. "Just one night?" she asked. I opened my mouth to answer, but the truth caught somewhere in my throat. I had no idea where I belonged anymore. Inside the room, everything smelled faintly like lemon cleaner and old carpet. I placed my purse on the bed and sat down carefully beside it. The silence pressed against me immediately. No grandfather clock ticking downstairs. No television playing softly in the den. No Harold humming while he watered the kitchen plants before bed. Just the low rattle of the air conditioner struggling against the August heat. I removed my wedding ring slowly and placed it on the nightstand beside the motel Bible. Harold had been gone 11 months, but some nights it still felt impossible that he was not somewhere nearby. I kept hearing his voice in my head. Check the cedar chest in the attic before you trust anyone. Around midnight, I finally opened my phone. 3 missed calls from Margaret Doyle. 1 text from Michael. "Mom, please stop making this emotional. Vanessa and I are trying to do what is best for everyone." I stared at the message until the screen dimmed. Emotional. That word again. As if 38 years inside those walls could be packed into storage bins without emotion. I set the phone face down and closed my eyes, but sleep never came. Instead, memories did. Harold sanding the attic floors one summer, while Michael handed him nails from a coffee can. Lily hiding Christmas presents up there because she thought nobody would find them. The cedar chest itself sitting beneath the small round attic window, untouched for years except by Harold. Around 1:30 in the morning, another message appeared on my phone. This one from an unknown number. "Do not go back to the house tonight." My stomach tightened instantly. I read it 3 times. No name, no explanation, just those 7 words. Before I could decide whether to reply, another message appeared. "Vanessa knows about the attic now." My heartbeat began pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I called the number immediately, but it went straight to voicemail. I sat frozen on the edge of the motel bed, staring at the glowing screen in my hand. Then my phone rang suddenly, making me jump so hard I almost dropped it. "Margaret." I answered immediately. "Evelyn," she whispered breathlessly. "There are movers at your house right now." I stood up so quickly the motel chair tipped over beside me. "What?" "They're carrying boxes out through the garage." "And Evelyn." Her voice lowered even more. "Michael is in the attic." Everything inside me went cold, because for the first time all night, I understood something clearly. Whatever Harold left inside, that cedar chest was important enough for someone to panic over. In the next part, Evelyn returns before sunrise and sees something leaving her house that should never have been touched. But the person helping Michael may be someone she trusted for decades. I drove back through town with both hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my fingers ached. The streets were almost empty at 2 in the morning. A gas station glowed at the corner near the church Herald, and I attended for 30 years. Everything looked painfully normal. That was the strange thing about betrayal. The world kept moving while your entire life quietly collapsed behind your ribs. I parked half a block away from the house and killed the headlights immediately. Margaret stood waiting beside her mailbox in a robe and slippers, arms folded tightly against the cool night air. The moment I stepped out of the car, she hurried toward me. "They have been at it for hours," she whispered. Her eyes looked frightened. 2 moving trucks already left. I stared toward my house. The upstairs attic light glowed faintly behind the small, round window. Harold rarely went up there after his knees got bad, but he always kept the key to the cedar chest hidden on his keyring. Nobody else ever touched it. "Did you see what they carried out?" I asked quietly. Margaret hesitated. "Mostly boxes. Furniture. But about 20 minutes ago." She lowered her voice further. "Michael carried down a locked wooden case." My stomach twisted instantly. Harold owned only one locked wooden case. A long walnut document box he kept hidden inside the cedar chest itself. I had not seen it in years. We crossed the street slowly together, staying close to the hedges lining the sidewalk. Through the front curtains, I could see strangers moving around my living room wrapping dishes and newspaper. One man laughed while carrying the lamp Harold bought me for our 25th anniversary. I felt strangely detached watching it all, like I was looking into someone else's home. Then the garage door opened. My breath caught immediately. Michael stepped out, carrying the walnut box against his chest. Vanessa followed closely behind him, speaking in sharp whispers I could not fully hear. But I caught enough. "We cannot let her see those papers." "Papers?" Michael looked exhausted. Sweat darkened the collar of his shirt, even in the cool air. "Maybe we should wait until morning," he muttered. Vanessa stopped walking. "No, we finish this tonight." The garage light spilled across the driveway as Michael carried the box toward the back of Vanessa's SUV. Then another figure appeared from the garage shadows. My entire body froze. It was Richard Bellamy, Harold's attorney, the same man who sat beside me at Harold's funeral holding my hand while I cried through the service. Richard glanced around nervously before taking the walnut box from Michael himself. I felt the blood drain from my face. Margaret gasped softly beside me. Richard opened the rear passenger door and carefully placed the box inside his car, like it contained something fragile, something important. Then he looked directly toward the street. For one horrifying second, I thought he saw me standing there in the dark. Instead, he reached into his coat pocket and handed Michael a thick envelope. Cash. My son accepted it without hesitation. I could barely breathe. Harold trusted Richard with everything. Our wills, our savings, the deed to the house. And now he was helping them remove whatever Harold hid from me before he died. Then my phone vibrated suddenly inside my purse. The noise sounded deafening in the quiet street. Vanessa's head snapped toward the hedges immediately. "Did you hear that?" she whispered sharply. In the next part, Evelyn discovers why Harold's attorney betrayed her trust. But before dawn arrives, someone unexpected will reveal what was hidden inside the walnut box. I silenced my phone so quickly my hands shook. Vanessa stared toward the hedges for another tense second before Michael touched her arm and said something too low for me to hear. She finally turned back toward the driveway, but I stayed perfectly still beside Margaret, barely breathing. Richard Bellamy closed his car door carefully after placing the walnut box inside. Then he straightened his tie with the same calm expression he used in courtrooms and funeral homes. Watching him stand there beneath my porch light felt unreal. Harold trusted that man for almost 30 years. We spent Christmas dinners with his family. I held his wife's hand through chemotherapy. And now he was taking something from my attic in the middle of the night like a thief. Michael stuffed the thick envelope into his jacket pocket without even counting the money. That hurt more than I expected. Not because of the cash itself, but because my son looked comfortable accepting it. Like this had already become normal to him. Richard said quietly, "Once the paperwork is signed tomorrow, everything moves much faster." Vanessa nodded immediately. "Good. We need this finished before she starts asking questions." She, not Evelyn, not Mom, just she, like I was already erased from the family. Margaret squeezed my wrist gently beside me. "We should go," she whispered, but I could not move yet. I kept staring at Michael, searching for some sign of hesitation, some guilt. Instead, he just looked tired, like a man trying to convince himself he had no other choice. Richard climbed into his car first and slowly backed out of the driveway. My eyes never left the walnut box sitting on the rear seat beside him. Harold protected that box for years. Whatever was inside mattered enough for people to risk everything tonight. The moment Richard's car disappeared around the corner, I finally stepped backward into the shadows again. That was when I noticed another figure standing across the street. Small, motionless. Lily, my granddaughter, stood barefoot at the edge of Margaret's lawn, wearing pale blue pajamas and clutching something tightly against her chest. Before I could speak, she hurried toward me. Her eyes looked frightened. "Grandma," she whispered breathlessly. "I found this before Mom saw it." She pushed a folded envelope into my hands. The paper looked old and slightly yellowed around the edges. My name was written across the front in Harold's handwriting. Not printed, not typed, written carefully in blue ink. Evelyn. My chest tightened instantly. "Where did you get this?" I whispered. Lily glanced nervously back toward the house. Grandpa hid it under the cedar chest lining. Dad did not find it. My fingers trembled as I opened the envelope beneath the streetlight. Inside was a single key taped beside a handwritten note. "If Michael ever forces you out of this house, do not trust Richard Bellamy. And whatever happens, open locker 214 before they do." I stared at the words until they blurred. Locker 214. I had no idea what that meant. Then headlights suddenly swept across the street. Vanessa's SUV pulled sharply out of the driveway toward us. Lily gasped softly. "She cannot know I gave you that." My heart began pounding as the SUV slowed directly beside the curb. And when the passenger window rolled down, Vanessa was smiling. In the next part, Evelyn learns why Harold prepared for betrayal long before his death. But the truth hidden inside locker 214 may destroy more than one family. Vanessa rested one arm along the open window frame like she was greeting neighbors on an ordinary suburban street, instead of hunting for secrets in the middle of the night. Her blonde hair looked perfectly styled even at nearly 3 in the morning. That used to impress me once. I used to think her composure meant strength. Now I understood it was something colder, something practiced. "There you are," she said smoothly, her eyes moving from me to Lily. "We were worried." Lily stepped closer to my side instantly. I slipped Harold's envelope into my purse without breaking eye contact with Vanessa. "Funny," I replied quietly. "You did not seem very worried when you left my luggage on the sidewalk." Her smile tightened slightly, just enough for me to notice. Michael thought some space would help everyone calm down. There was that word again. Everyone, as though I was no longer part of the family included in it. Vanessa looked directly at Lily then. "Get in the car, sweetheart." Lily hesitated. "I want to stay with Grandma tonight." Vanessa's expression hardened for one quick second before softening again. "It is late. Your father's waiting for you." Lily looked at me helplessly. I touched her shoulder gently. "It is okay." She climbed slowly into the back seat without another word. Before Vanessa pulled away, she leaned slightly closer to me through the window. Her perfume drifted into the night air. Expensive, sharp, familiar. "You should really stop listening to Margaret Doyle," she said softly. "People your age get confused when emotions take over." Then she drove away before I could answer. I stood there watching the red taillights disappear down the street, while anger settled into my chest so quietly it almost frightened me. Not loud anger, not wild anger, something calmer, sharper. Margaret drove me back to the motel 15 minutes later. Neither of us spoke much during the ride. The envelope in my purse felt heavier than it should have. Once inside my room, I locked the door immediately and sat on the edge of the bed beneath the dim lamp. Then I finally looked carefully at the small brass key Harold left me. Tiny numbers were engraved along the side. 214. My eyes drifted back to his note. "Open locker 214 before they do." I suddenly remembered something from years ago. Harold rented a safe deposit box at Franklin Community Bank after his father died. He always joked that old men trusted banks more than family. At the time, I thought he meant financial paperwork. Now I was no longer sure. I barely slept at all. By 7 in the morning, I was already parked outside Franklin Community Bank watching employees unlock the front doors one by one. The building looked exactly the same as it had 20 years ago. Same brick walls, same flower beds, Same American flag, shifting gently above the entrance. Inside, the air smelled faintly like polished wood and coffee. A young teller smiled politely as I approached the counter. "Can I help you?" I slid the brass key carefully across the desk. "I need access to safe deposit box 214. The teller checked her computer briefly. Then her expression changed. "One moment, Mrs. Carter." She disappeared through a back hallway and returned with the branch manager himself. An older man in a gray suit approached me carefully. "Mrs. Carter," he said quietly, "we have been instructed to contact someone immediately if you ever came for this box." My stomach tightened instantly. "Who?" The manager hesitated before answering. "Your husband." I stared at him in silence. Harold had been dead for almost a year. Then the manager lowered his voice further. "Mrs. Carter, according to our records, someone already tried to access box 214 last night." In the next part, Evelyn finally opens the safe deposit box Harold protected in secret for years. But what waits inside may explain why her family turned against her so suddenly. The branch manager introduced himself as Daniel Mercer and led me through a narrow hallway lined with framed photographs of former bank presidents. My heels echoed softly against the marble floor while my heart pounded harder with every step. Daniel stopped outside a heavy steel door and glanced back at me carefully. "Mrs. Carter, the man who came last night did not have the correct access key." Relief washed through me, so suddenly my knees almost weakened. "Who was he?" I asked quietly. Daniel hesitated just long enough to confirm he recognized the name before saying it. "Richard Bellamy." I looked down at the brass key still resting in my palm. Harold knew. Somehow, long before his heart gave out in that hospital room, he knew exactly who would turn against me. Daniel unlocked the vault and guided me toward a wall of narrow safe deposit boxes. Number 214 sat near the bottom row. Small, plain, quietly ordinary. My hands trembled as I inserted Harold's key beside the bank key Daniel provided. The lock clicked open immediately. "Take all the time you need," Daniel said softly before leaving me alone inside the vault. I pulled the metal box out carefully and carried it to the small wooden table in the center of the room. For several seconds, I just stared at it. 38 years of marriage teaches you many things about a person, but sometimes the most important truths are the ones hidden in silence. Finally, I opened the lid. Inside were 3 sealed envelopes, a flash drive, and a thick stack of documents secured with a faded blue ribbon. The first envelope had my name written across the front in Harold's familiar handwriting. "Evelyn, if you're reading this, then I was right to worry." My throat tightened instantly. I unfolded the letter slowly while the quiet hum of the vault filled the room around me. Harold wrote that 6 months before his death, he discovered Richard Bellamy had been helping Michael move money from one of our family trusts without my knowledge. At first, Harold believed Michael had simply made poor financial decisions under pressure from Vanessa. But then he uncovered something worse. Vanessa had accumulated enormous private debts Michael knew nothing about. Credit cards, personal loans, gambling losses. I sat frozen staring at the page while Harold's words blurred beneath my tears. He wrote that Vanessa convinced Michael selling the house was their only way out. But Harold refused to allow it. So he changed everything quietly before he died. Ownership of the house, the family trust, every major account. Everything had been legally transferred into my name alone months before the funeral. My pulse thundered in my ears. That was why they panicked. That was why Richard removed the walnut box in the middle of the night. I reached for the second envelope with shaking fingers. This one contained photographs, not financial records, pictures. Vanessa sitting inside a casino beside a man I did not recognize. Richard Bellamy standing with them both near a blackjack table in Connecticut. Dates scribbled carefully across the back in Harold's handwriting. Evidence. My stomach turned. Then I opened the final envelope. Inside was a single folded document and a handwritten note from Harold. "If they force you out, do not confront them first. Show this to Michael when you are ready to know whether your son still has a conscience." Confused, I unfolded the document slowly. The moment I saw the first page, my breath stopped completely. It was a private agreement signed by Vanessa and Michael. In the next part, Evelyn discovers the secret deal her son made behind her back months before Harold died. But one sentence buried inside the agreement may change everything she thought she knew about Michael. I read the agreement 3 times before I fully understood what I was holding. The paper trembled slightly between my fingers while the vault around me seemed to grow colder with every line. 6 months before Harold died, Michael and Vanessa had signed a private financial arrangement prepared by Richard Bellamy himself. The agreement stated that once the house was sold, a percentage of the proceeds would immediately be transferred toward repayment of Vanessa's private debts. But it was the final paragraph that hollowed out my chest completely. Michael acknowledged that his mother, Evelyn Carter, would not voluntarily surrender residential control of the property due to emotional dependency and advanced age. Emotional dependency. Advanced age. I stared at those words until my vision blurred. My own son signed a document describing me like an obstacle. Not his mother. Not the woman who raised him after Harold lost his job during the recession. Not the woman who worked double shifts at the hospital cafeteria so he could attend college without debt. Just an elderly complication standing between them and money. I cover my mouth with one hand and close my eyes. Somewhere deep inside the bank vault, a ventilation system hummed softly. Otherwise, the silence felt unbearable. Then I noticed something else. Michael's signature looked uneven, pressed too hard into the paper, almost shaky. Vanessa's signature beside it flowed smoothly and confidently across the page. I remembered how exhausted Michael looked the night before. The dark circles beneath his eyes. The way he avoided looking directly at me. For the first time since all this started, doubt crept into my anger. Had Vanessa manipulated him more deeply than I realized? Or had I simply spent 42 years loving someone capable of betraying me this completely? I folded the agreement carefully and reached for the flash drive next. Daniel Mercer helped me access a private office upstairs with a computer. My pulse raced while the files loaded slowly across the screen. Most contained financial records, loan statements, property evaluations, casino account summaries under Vanessa's name. The numbers made my stomach turn. Hundreds of thousands of dollars. Then one final audio file appeared dated 3 weeks before Harold died. I clicked it open. Static crackled softly before Harold's voice filled the small office. Weak, tired, but unmistakably Harold. If Evelyn ever hears this, he said quietly, then I was too late to stop what is happening. Tears burned instantly behind my eyes. Harold explained that he confronted Richard after discovering missing trust transfers connected to Vanessa's gambling debts. Richard promised to fix everything quietly. Instead, he continued helping them behind Harold's back. Then Harold said something that made the blood drain from my face. Michael believes Vanessa is pregnant. I froze. Harold continued carefully. But Richard privately confirmed the medical records were falsified. Vanessa used the pregnancy story to pressure Michael into helping her secure the house before the debts surfaced publicly. My hand slipped from the computer mouse. Pregnant. Vanessa told the entire family she lost a baby 5 months before Harold died. I remembered comforting her in my kitchen while she cried against my shoulder. I remembered Michael sitting beside her looking shattered. Suddenly, every memory felt poisoned. Then the office door opened abruptly behind me. I turned so fast my chair scraped sharply across the floor. Daniel Mercer stood there looking pale. "Mrs. Carter," he said quietly, "your son is downstairs asking whether anyone has accessed safe deposit box 214 this morning." My heartbeat stopped cold, because for the first time since this nightmare began, Michael knew I had the truth.